meeting to order, please. First, I would like for us to welcome all of our visitors today. We always love for people to come into our meetings to know what's going on, and sometimes we don't have enough of that. If you would please stand and very quickly introduce yourselves. Start over here.
Leila Taylor, Assistant Director, Gigi's Christian Academy, Pearl, Mississippi.
Shalom, Case Kids Learning Center, Pearl, Mississippi.
I'm Cassandra Walter. I'm a new lawyer for the health department.
I'm Dee Tolsdorf. I'm an attorney with the health department.
Larry Noble, Chuck here in Hattiesburg.
Juliana Sweeney, Children of the City Academy, Jackson, Mississippi.
Trina Williams, Children of the City Academy.
Walter Young, Alpha Christian Daycare, a member of the Child Care Network.
In the back.
I'm Chelsea Dawsey, I'm just Miss Sally's niece.
You're important too. You're important too.
Yolanda Gary with Prep Company.
Debbie Ellis, Delta Licensed Providers.
Donna Spade, Nutrition Director here with the Board of Health, and worked on the nutrition guidelines.
Welcome.
Thank all of you for coming. And since we're being filmed today, we need to introduce ourselves. So let's start over at that side.
Vicki Berryman, Director for the Office of Licensure.
Christy Schnecker, work for Child Care Licensure.
I'm Sally West. I'm a Program Director for Hancock County Child Development Center in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi.
Dolores School, Prep Company, Victoria School.
Dean Bobo, owner of Magnolia Kindergarten.
Sandra Zigenhagen, owner and director of Good Shepherd Christian Academy, Gulfport, Mississippi.
Colleen Smith, Director of Crossgates Methodist Children's Center in Brandon, and representing private providers in District 1 here in this area.
I'm Joanne Kelly. I work for the Early Childhood Institute. I'm representing providers in District 2.
Shay South, Director of Maple Farm Center in Olive Branch, Mississippi.
I'm Judy Prine, and I direct the Child Development Center at Pearl River at Jones County Junior College. I used to work there. I've done them both.
About where I was.
About where I was.
Margie Nobles, owner and director of Place Good Child Care Center in Petal. All of you got a copy of the minutes. Have you had a chance to read over them? Not take just a second to see if we need to make any corrections or additions. If you approve of the minutes, please let me see by show of hands. Motion to approve. Okay. The minutes are approved. Thank you, Kelly. There you, I didn't do that, but thank you, I needed you. Okay, new business. First thing on the new business is an update on the Board of Health meeting. As you know, the regulations were approved by the Advisory Council and were to be presented to the board for approval. There were 3 or 4 things that a number of providers throughout the state were still very concerned about that were going to have some further study. But as all of this came before the board also was told that there was a legal action involved with the DECCD program with DHS, and at that point it was suggested that the regulations be put on hold for another session. So that has given time to work on problems with the regulations and for other things to be worked out that were not involved with the health department. Okay, the board, I don't know, they seem to be hesitant to go forward as long as there were problems on the other end, but there were no problems with us except for some of the things within the regs that we felt needed more discussion. Therefore, the regulations have been put on hold until now, and hopefully we'll be able to go forward from this point. At this time, Ms. Berryman will give us a report on, the child care amendments work group.
Thank you, Margie. As Margie indicated, the Department of Health took regulations in, I think this was October, in the, October meeting. And this is a set of regulations that had been worked on by the department and by the advisory council for at least a year, or not more. We may need some more chairs for some of these others coming in. And in listening to our providers, you know, one of the things the department wants to make sure everyone understands is we're trying to be very transparent in moving forward with these regulations. We want the providers' input. We want y'all to know what's going on and the advisory council to know what's going on as we move forward with the regulations. The department is pushing to try to increase the activity of our children and increase the nutrition of our children so that we're preventing the obesity and the medical problems that we're dealing with right now with ourselves. We don't want our children raised with these type of problems, so part of the regulation changes address that aspect of it. The other areas of the regulations that have been worked on the last year or so basically deal with some cleanup or some areas where you as providers have come to us and said, this is causing confusion, this is not working out there, we do not have the adequate means or the adequate staff. So some of the changes that have been made were that. 3 of the specific issues that were brought up at the board meeting, or that really was brought to my attention, I don't know that some of them were specifically stated at the board meetings, were the vans. One of the regulations that we had in those regulations deleted the facility's abilities to use 15-passenger vans. The other area of major concern was to do with the cribs. And as y'all know, the federal guidelines have mandated the requirements for cribs now. The other area appeared to be around the toddlers and the activity level for the toddlers. Once we got that feedback from the providers, one of the things that really came to my attention was the providers that actually had hands-on every day did not feel like they had input, that they themselves, the people that were doing the hands-on, didn't have input in making sure that the department understood what was occurring in their facility. When we got that information, what I did was I called together a group of providers. They were not the advisory council, because actually the advisory council had already spoken. But I needed, as a department, additional information so that we could make sure we were providing guidance correctly. With that, each of the licensing official groups gave me 4 providers from their district, from their area, that they felt might be willing to come to Jackson and us sit down and discuss these issues. We called it a little work group, but basically it was a group that I could listen to, that were providers with hands-on, that was doing this work. So they did come to Jackson, and we sit down and we discussed the areas of the cribs, we discussed the areas of the toddlers being allowed some TV time. We discussed the vans and what might work for the providers. So what I've got here, that actually what I'd like to bring forth at this time is, in listening to those providers, we as a department have sat down and are suggesting some changes to the regulations. Y'all, and if there's enough, the providers may have to share. Now here is the entire set of the regs. The 3 or 4 areas that we worked on as a group, the small paperwork you're getting, are those areas. And the areas that we discussed that might be a change from what had already been proposed is in red. This entire group is a set of regulations that had already been approved by the advisory council, and it also incorporates the areas in red.
Would you please repeat that? Would you please repeat that?
Okay. There was a request for me to repeat. Basically, what I'm doing here is passing out the little group that got together when we talked about what was needed with the child care providers. I have put together those changes from what was actually sent to the Board of Health in the January meeting, just the areas that we discussed. So I put those out, and they're addressed in red so that everyone can clearly see what these providers thought would work for their facilities, and it's different than what was already proposed.
If you want more copies, Vicky, I apologize. Here's some more of these.
Did the advisory council decide already, or you want to make more copies of
They're
theirs?
want copies of the changes.
Okay, they may have to share, or you may have to make some copies, that's all.
Did all of you get
We didn't know how
copies?
many were gonna be here. If it's okay with the chairman, what I would, if it's okay with Ms. Nobles, what I'll do is talk about each one of these sections. And this is the time for input. This is the time for input from the provider, from the chair, from the council, and from the providers. But we want to be very upfront so everyone knows what we want to do here. And once we do this, we will take this forward, back to the board.
Ms. Nikki, since we're waiting on everyone to get a copy in their hand.
Sure.
Do you mind sharing with us, the percentage of those you invited, like a number? I know you said it was a cross section, to see how many really attended so that they could have that information.
Each of the districts, we've got 3 districts in the state. You've got the north, central, and south. And, I was asking these individuals to come at their own expense, basically, to come in. And that didn't appear to be a problem with any we called. But what we called was 4 from each district. One of the individuals I never received, reached. I did receive the center, but I never received a call back. And I think that was in the Delta territory. No, that was in the Coast territory, because I ended up calling Miss Margie. Since she had several centers and is in that area, would she come in and provide, we wanted a cross section, north, central, and south, because even though the facilities are under the same regulations, the dynamics of each of these territories is different. And it makes a difference sometime in how you're actually having to implement these regulations. We wanted to try to be fair and get a cross section from that.
And please let me say at this point, that when she called me, it was not because of my involvement here, it's because of my 40 years in childcare.
No, actually, I didn't involve the council on purpose, because y'all had spoken and you had already worked through these regulations for a year. I knew that the council knew what was going on with the regulations, but the concern that I kept hearing when we had the board meeting was the everyday provider out in the field. Were we touching them? Were we getting their input? And that's why we went outside. And at this point, I still need to bring it to the council and let's talk about these issues for further input. So not only do we have those individuals, we have these 10 providers ended up showing up for the meeting. So.
That's a great turnout.
And it
What
was
you were
strictly
asking.
a discussion.
Oh,
There
yeah,
was
it
no voting,
No decision.
no decisions
But you
made.
needed to hear
It was
the input.
strictly
I wanted
discussion
their
and
input.
input.
In looking at it, as we talked about it, one of the things that had come up was regarding the serious occurrences and how the facility handled serious occurrences and how that report got put back to the state agency. Anytime there's a serious occurrence in the facility, one of the changes that had already been made or that had been requested was the fact that when a child is taken to the doctor, that was already something that had been in there. But there was a comment requesting that we added in the facility regulations to allow that report to the licensing official be sent via email or in writing to us, versus you having to chase down your licensing official who may not be out in the field. And that's a very fair request. Matter of fact, that is documentation that can be used as your documentation later. The department was totally fine with that and in agreement with that. That's one of the changes that's been requested to be made. And y'all, please feel free to speak as we go through this. This is open discussion unless Ms. Nobles has any concern otherwise. Okay, I got her.
I got a question. I'm Joseph Sewell. I've not been to the meeting, but I've had quite a bit of feedback on what goes on. And I just wanted to ask a question about the group that was chosen. I do understand that there were some people that had concerns even before you got the group, where Were any of those people included in this group as far as getting information, or were these groups just chosen from people that don't have any problems? Or was it?
Sir, what I did is I called the licensing official and just asked him to give me 4 individuals. I did not specifically call the people who I talked to at the board meeting.
Yeah.
Because I did know their concerns.
Gotcha.
They had given me their concerns, and that is actually the reason we called this group together.
Just wanted to.
Yes, sir. Their concerns was taken into consideration, but it was more that I knew their concerns as we walked through this, so that we could talk about these areas.
Thank you.
I think probably the easiest way for me to guide you through this is in the handout I sent to you, what this does, it talks about the rule number. What rule is it in the regulation that was proposed? So if you've got the full set of regulations, you can go to that rule number, such as Rule 1.7.1. So like I said, I want to make sure we're being very, very, open to the public so that everyone knows we're being very transparent. I want your advice, I want your input, so that's why we're making sure we get a handout and everything here. Now, as far as an advisory council, what would be the better way to do this? Would you prefer to take each rule and y'all vote on each rule? As far as allowing the department to go further and put this in the reg, or whether y'all are in agreement to put this in the reg?
My preference would be for us to go rule by rule.
Okay. All right. With that, the department would like to put in, or in writing via email or fax, so that it would allow the providers the ability to fax their incidences into the department.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to add this.
Second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? And please vote by show of hands. Passed.
All right. Now, the language that we have gotten here has been added to this new draft that you got, so that everybody has a full copy of the language that was presented to the board to include what we're recommending here today. All right, to go to the next area. There was a lot of concern as we were in the board meeting and in talking to the individuals that were there at the board meeting regarding the agency implementing or having in the regulations the federal requirements itself regarding CRIBs. So if we looked at Chapter 9, Rule 1.9.4, there is a section in there under item number 5 that deals with CRIBs, and basically what it says is regarding the agency enforcing the federal or that actually stated in the state licensure regulations the information regarding their federal requirements for CRIBs. What the department has recommended is deleting everything but leaving the sentence in, the facility shall use a firm mattress covered by a fitting sheet. Now, everyone that, I know the council already does understand, the federal requirements, they're already standing anyway. They're a standalone requirement. Facilities shall always be held liable if anything occurred, because it is a federal requirement anyway. That's nothing that says it's got to be put in the state licensure regulations, because facilities actually must meet that also because it's a federal requirement. But that's something that's federal, and it doesn't have to be part of our state licensure regs.
Is there any discussion about this?
I'll make a motion then, with your permission, Ms. Chairman, to accept that, we delete
a second? Second. Any comments from the council? And please show by show of hands. Passed.
The next area that the providers at the board meeting had a real concern was regarding not allowing any type of television viewing or any type of electronic media to be used for toddlers. They really had no problem with the fact of it not being used for infants, you know, because infants basically don't use electronic media. But their concern was the toddler age, because a lot of the facilities, it seems, does use media, electronic media, for having their children exercise, playing 1, 2, 3, playing educational type things. So the agency did relook at that, and we talked to the group that was the group that got together, and they would like to add toddlers back. And that's going to include, what had been recommended by the board was totally remove toddlers out of allowing it at all. Is putting toddlers back in. If you will look in section 4 and section 5, allowing toddlers that 30 minutes or it's 1 hour a day. But it still contains, it needs to be educational content and a scheduled part of the approved daily plan of that facility. In other words, it's something that you plan. It's not that a child is just sitting over in the corner watching a television show, you know, as a convenience for something else. This is something that is actually planned as part of this child's routine day.
Is there any discussion or comment concerning this?
Marjorie, I'd like to make a comment on that,
Okay,
just for
Joanne.
it noted. I made the initial, motion to support that. And the reason that we included toddlers was because it came from Caring for Our Children, which is the document that was written by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So, just as a statement, I would like to note that's where that recommendation came from, and I continue to support no television for children under the age of 15.
Are there any other comments?
I would love to go on record to, show support for what Joanne said. I was very happy to see this come up. I just don't see the benefit of television, with young children, no matter how many ways we slice it.
Okay. I'm gonna step away from here for just a second and say this. In many of the centers, the people that I speak with, a lot of the teachers are maybe older, may not be able to be energetic and do the things that the children can see in a video that they can follow and do. There's a lot of variety that they can get from it. I just want to make sure that as we as a council make a decision that we think about the 1,500 centers out there that might need some consideration.
And I would support Margie because, if everything is house use. So just because it's television, it's the way that it's used, because I use it for education. And my children thrive just as they see the McDonald's arches. And they see the things on television, they remember them, and they learn. So it's going to always be a controversy, but it's all in how something is used. And I think the mere fact that if a person comes in to check my center, they're going to see that my teachers put in their lesson plan, because if I see it, I'm going to tell them, let me see your plan. And if it's not in your plan, you're going to turn it off. So I just think it puts the responsibility on us. So if you in your center, if you don't want it, that gives you the flexibility. And I think that's a good thing, to have the flexibility. If you don't want it, you don't do it. If you do want it, then you do it.
Are there
I'm
any
in
other?
support of what Ms. Joanne said, because all the studies that I've done lately, they that television is not, children at that age need the correspondence with, so I support.
I would just like to say, personally, my grandson, the Leapfrog series, at age 2, he knew alphabet and the sounds from watching Leapfrog. So television can be very beneficial if you're gonna use it in an instructional way.
Another comment?
You know, I work at a child care facility, but I'm thinking about at home, my grandson, he's 3, and he learns a lot from being at preschool. But at home, he watched Sprout. Now, they have a lot of educational programs on there. He learned reinforcement from school, the counting, ABC, colors, different kind of sharing. So I say that when he's watching Sprout, he's getting good feedback and he's getting good reinforcement, and he learns a lot. The songs that they sing, he learns a lot. So I disagree with not having it.
Other comment, back row.
I think that at least including it for an hour is fair, because it's giving you that option. And just like we have feedbacks to say that you shouldn't eat fatty food, you do, you know. And if the documentation, I think it's fair, if the documentation in your curriculum shows that you are using it to benefit the education and you're not abusing it, I think that at least giving an hour is fair for everybody. And if you choose not to, and you think, that's just like if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you know, that's your religion, you know, and different religions, I believe, different things apply. But if you choose not to, then you shouldn't. But if I think I should be allowed, if I can provide the documentation showing that I am using it for education, I think I should be allowed.
Yes, you may.
Why not for you?
You got, we have to use a little discretion. If you're personally opposed to TV, that's fine. You can do it in your center, but you need to think about the other 16 or 1700 centers we've got out here. And we're talking about 8 or 9 hours a day. We're talking about 1 hour. If you elect to use that hour or that portion of that hour.
Yes, sir.
I just like, I support you. I'm an educator, I've got a degree in education, and I think I'm fairly knowledgeable enough to know how much is available when you're dealing with kids of that age. I support doing it just an hour or so a day, and I think it's used in the public schools anyway. I mean, if you don't know how to do it, I think there are enough people around that can guide you in this, but I think it's very helpful to have the viewing in the centers, if you do it right.
Just
Yes,
kind
sir.
of close it up. Walter Young, Alpha Christian Daycare. Would you feel comfortable if it's written optional, if the word optional was put in?
Joanne or me, to me, it doesn't make any difference. One of the things that was said about, you know, if you can have proof that, you know, if you can show documentation that you're using it in the correct way, you know, I think that sounds like it would be more difficult than anything for somebody to actually show documentation that they're using their TV properly. I think like what Joanne is talking about are the studies that have been done on brain research, and every year we learn more about the way young children learn and the way our brains respond to certain stimulus. So from the general brain research that you read about and you see the studies on, it shows to have a negative effect to have the electronic media with young children. And it's not that we can stop it, because we can't stop it, because many of our children have already watched an hour of Dora before they came to school that day while their mama got ready. I know my children at work have watched TV before they even came in, so they're getting their hour a day at home, or an hour and a half or 2 hours. So I just don't have any interest in providing more of that.
I've had, in my earlier years, I've had several centers, myself. I've managed centers, I've worked in centers, I've owned centers. And I truly support and understand everything you're saying. But the document that we have, the research base that tells us children under 2 does not need television, was written by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's written by doctors of children who, from all kind of research avenues, have come to this decision. It would be just like you going to the doctor and him saying your child has the flu, you need to give this medicine such and such a time, and you say, oh, but doctor, please, let me just give it once a day, because I really don't think he needs all that medicine. This is not something that I say, this is not something Colleen says, this is something that we have years of research behind. And all of you who are providers have to admit that we're seeing more and more children coming into our programs with ADHD and all kinds of behavior disorders. The physicians are saying that there is a direct link behind all of this early television, all of this early screening in infants, and ADHD. So even if there is just an option or a guess that it might be, looks to me like we need to get on board and understand more and try to comply with some of that, so that we do have better results for our children when they get older. Again, I'm not saying anything, please don't go back and think Joanne Kelly's saying something, because I appreciate everything that you do. This is just something based on research that I strongly believe.
By definition, in our regulations in the front, the toddler that we're speaking of is from 12 months to 24 months. I know some of us think toddlers, we're thinking 2, some are thinking 2. It depends on how you have them divided out into your center. So just wanted to bring that to everybody's mind that we're talking about a child from 1 to 2.
1 year olds.
1 year olds.
It reads on here, 5, it says for toddlers and preschoolers.
Yes, ma'am. So that puts it in from a child from 1 to 5, it says in your documentation. Okay.
Are there other comments from the floor?
Yeah, I hold the television, you know, it's how it's used. Very, very, very educational. You know, and it does have, you know, and I agree, I have had parents, I have to ask them, what did your child watch before they went to bed last night? Because they came in a tear, and then they tell me, well, I don't know, you know, the television is in their room, and I tell them you should monitor what your child watches, because it can be used, you know, to destroy a child. It's educating them, but it can be negatively or it can be positively, depending on how we use the tool. But I'm just happy I didn't read that document, because my grandson knew all of his sounds and letters, and he'd fall asleep, whatever the leap taught. You know, you have to have the proper things before our children, what we place before their eyes.
Well, I'm the one that recommended the hour, and through information that I got off the internet, and it was in rebuttal to the documentation from the American Pediatrics Association that recommended 1 hour. And that's where I kind of came in the middle and said, okay, well, there's documentation to say no, there's documentation to say yes, and that's with everything. And I even talked with, about the iPads and the computer with the superintendent of Jackson Public Schools, and his concern about, especially the computer club, when they get to public school, we're gonna require it. So when are you gonna get them ready? And I was like, oh, well, you know, so it's a matter again of what we know we need to do, and we know we have Common Core that we're having to comply with. Even now with the kindergarten, you're having to teach subject verb agreement. Who was sound? I have videos to teach that because, some of my teachers are not as good, and a lot of times I will explain it. But when I show them the pictures that show them it's a person, place, or thing, it clicks. So then you can reinforce it at home using pictures with the parents.
What age group do you have?
This is a kindergarten group, but they also recommend for pre-K in Jackson Public
Are we
Schools.
talking about changing rules?
No, I'm giving,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
giving
sorry.
a scenario
Okay.
I was listening to
of media. I'm talking about
I
media.
apologize, Ms. Norris.
I'm
I
talking
got
about media
sidetracked.
totally. I just kinda was talking about media and my views on media and how it can be used in all phases. So, no, it wasn't just about television, but I did make the recommendation of the 1 hour.
I personally feel like, we're talking about 12 to 24-month-old children. If a daycare center implements a television time for that age group, that has to be one awesome program you're putting on, because they've got the attention span of 2 minutes. 5 minutes if you're lucky, but 2 minutes. And I just think an hour is way too long I think it's, my opinion is inappropriate for 12 to 24 months. But I do think that preschoolers and that component, and maybe even your older toddler group, the 26-month to 36-month, they possibly could, get that hour component in and use a curriculum such as Ms. Doris is talking about. But for 1-year-olds, I do think it's irrelevant because they're in that beginning language part.
Well, most videos that you use, if it's a singing or what, a dancing video, it's not, you're talking about an inch. You're not going to,
not an hour.
I would think you should just go an hour. You may do, your PE
The rule, Ms.
for 10 minutes.
The rule that I have found, my executive director's theory and rules, is that there was a reason why it was established. And that's because there are people who would probably force a 1-year-old to sit in front of a television for an entire hour because that's what's allotted in the regulations. Well, it says an hour, so they can watch it for an hour. And I think that all rules are made out of necessity.
You just don't take my right away to give me that option.
Well,
I just want the
That's
option.
it, the option.
That's, all right, we're gonna have to quickly,
Okay, but you have to understand the way it's coming, because it's not like you're sitting them right there. And for a 1-year-old, it's an interactive video, like Ms. Susan, we have one for ours, and they are actually moving. It's used like PE, but they're also learning. So it's how you use it and how you implement it into your curriculum to use. So I think it should be the provider's choice, like it should be an option as far as what you do, as far as watching TV in your center. Because it's not watching TV, you're watching something that's educational that they can benefit from.
okay.
Was there another one back, or want to do my out?
Did we see another hand?
I was just saying, let's move on.
Yeah, we are going to do that.
Well, Marky, I know that we're, shortly we're gonna vote on this, and from what I can tell, this is gonna pass because it looks like it's, gonna be the majority are gonna go with it. So I'm gonna ask that how it's read, what it says now, it says must be of educational content and a scheduled part of the approved daily plan. I would request, and this is not saying that I'm supporting it, I would request that it says must be of educational content, comma, interactive, comma, let me think what's the other one, and age appropriate, and schedule part of the, have that in there. Because, our guest that's right here that says, it's the way you do it. Well, what you're talking about is the way you do it.
Right. And we have to
We're talking
understand
about
that's
the
true with all the
1600,
regulations.
Right. it's-
Some of us
so
are going
that's
to try to
wonderful
do
that you're
everything
doing
in
that.
this book.
Right.
But the age appropriate, I think, is very good.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so it would read then, scheduled part of the approved daily plan, be interactive, age appropriate, and a part of the approved daily plan.
Yes.
Scheduled part of it, yes.
So that would just be adding in 2 more phrases in right
But
after
they're good
educational.
phrases.
Okay. After educational comment, y'all would like me to add, comma, interactive, comma, age appropriate, comma, and.
And the second part.
Okay, any other comment? Then shall we vote, please? Do I have a motion that we vote on this? I need a motion. Ms. Dolores, second. Okay, all in favor of this regulation with the new wording, please raise your hand. If you are in favor, raise your hand. One,
The new wording?
two, with the new wording inserted. Age appropriate and interactive. And I have how many? 1, 2, 3,
4.
4. But how many are there here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
What's going on? It's down. It failed.
We tried. I think we're overlooking our private child care centers, but we will go from there.
What would be the option if you came in and it was long?
You would be fine.
We'd be breaking regulations.
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Vicki.
Okay, Ms. Vicki, may I, go back just one article back to the